In a fast-paced world saturated with sleek perfection and polished surfaces, there's a growing desire to return to something simpler. Something softer, warmer, and more human. That's where Modern Cottagecore Charm steps in, embracing handmade imperfect beauty and slow living. This aesthetic captures the essence of rustic nostalgia but translates it into modern comfort. It's where vintage meets minimalism, and where soul-filled details bring life to every corner of the home. Cottagecore isn't just a style, it's a feeling. It's the scent of fresh-baked bread, the softness of worn linens, and the joy of dried herbs hanging near a sunlit window. In its modern interpretation, it merges traditional aesthetics with subtle, curated design, creating peaceful interiors that still feel current. American culture's long-standing appreciation for homesteading, DIY crafts, and farm-inspired living finds new light in this trend, grounding it in both heritage and modern sensibility. In the world of modern cottagecore, imperfection is gold. Think pottery with uneven rims, quilt stitched by hand, and furniture that proudly shows signs of age. These elements reflect care, craftsmanship, and a lived-in warmth. Unlike mass-produced decor, each handmade piece tells a story. The modern home embraces these artifacts not in spite of their flaws, but because of them. It's a celebration of authenticity and quiet charm. Layering is key to the cottagecore aesthetic, especially with textiles. Woven throws, hand-dyed linens, and ruffled curtains create an atmosphere of softness and warmth. Choose natural materials like cotton, wool, and linen, especially those that appear slightly wrinkled or worn. American quilting traditions and vintage lace details find a beautiful revival here, often showcased in handmade tablecloths or bedspreads. Modern cottagecore uses colors that feel pulled from nature: sage green, antique white, sun-bleached peach, clay brown, and dusty rose. These muted tones evoke open fields, old barns, and dried flower bouquets. While traditional cottagecore might lean heavily into florals and pastels, the modern twist simplifies the palette to bring balance and calm. Every shade is meant to soothe, not shout. Forget showroom-perfect sets. In a modern cottagecore home, furniture feels collected over time. A vintage oak chair, a hand-painted side table, a reclaimed bench, these all contribute to a storybook feel. The handmade touch shines through painted wood grain, natural finishes, and heirloom silhouettes. Even newly built pieces often carry a rustic or handmade look, blending innovation with tradition. Wall decor within this theme should speak softly and personally. Botanical illustrations, framed needlework, hand-pressed flowers, and soft watercolor landscapes fit the mood. Consider incorporating handwritten poetry or vintage recipe cards. These elements are deeply rooted in American domestic nostalgia, reminding us of simpler, handwritten eras. Imperfect brush strokes and time-worn paper only add to the charm. The cottagecore kitchen is the heart of the home. Open shelving displays hand-thrown mugs, vintage dishes, and glass jars filled with grains or dried herbs. Wicker baskets hold produce, and checkered tea towels hang on old hooks. But the modern edge appears in subtle ways: matte black fixtures, modern lighting, or an energy-efficient vintage-look stove. The goal is warmth, function, and authenticity. Letting in natural light is essential. Sheer, handmade curtains, perhaps muslin or linen, filter sunlight softly into the room. Where possible, keep windows bare or adorned simply to connect the indoors to the outdoors. Embracing imperfections like slightly uneven hems or handmade embroidery adds emotional depth. Light in a cottagecore home should always feel like a gentle hug. Nothing captures the cottagecore spirit quite like exposed wood. Whether it's a rustic ceiling beam, wide plank flooring, or a handmade dining table, wood introduces grounding warmth. Mixed with clay pottery, ceramic tiles, woven straw, and iron hardware, the materials in this aesthetic reflect rural craftsmanship and honest labor. The texture is key, perfectly imperfect, as though touched by real hands. From carved wooden bowls to antique candle holders, the accents in a modern cottagecore interior carry a soulful presence. Avoid anything too shiny or symmetrical. Instead, reach for the irregular, the aged, the storied. A stack of yellowing books or a ceramic vase with a tiny chip has more charm than anything store-bought and sterile. Fresh blooms, wildflowers, and potted herbs are indispensable. But this aesthetic doesn't call for manicured bouquets. It favors organic arrangements in mismatched vessels. Think daisies in mason jars, lavender bunches in enamel pitchers, or a windowsill row of basil and mint. Plants bring in life and movement, acting as a daily connection to nature and seasonality. Thrifting is a foundational part of the modern cottagecore journey. Flea markets, antique shops, and estate sales offer treasures that can't be found in chain stores. It's about the thrill of the find: a chipped mirror with an ornate frame, a worn leather-bound journal, or an old butter churn used as a flower stand. Each piece carries its own narrative. Crafting is not just decor, it's a lifestyle. The modern cottagecore home thrives on creativity, whether it's hand-painting terracotta pots, sewing cushion covers, or weaving macrame hangers. American DIY traditions merge here with sustainable ideals. These handmade touches create a sense of ownership and deep emotional value in the space. Every cottagecore home needs a retreat. A small corner with an overstuffed chair, a crocheted throw, and a nearby stack of books invites hours of escape. Add a small side table, a flickering candle, and perhaps a homemade bookmark, and you have a space that embodies the warmth and slowness of this aesthetic. The most liberating aspect of this design style is its love for imperfection. A hand-painted dresser with brush marks showing, unevenly hung frames, or visible mending stitches on a pillow cover. These are not flaws, but features. In a modern cottagecore home, imperfections represent truth, humanity, and intention. They bring depth that perfection never could. One of the most charming practices in cottagecore living is the gentle nod to the seasons. In spring, bring in tulips and soft pastels. Summer invites wildflowers and fresh-cut herbs. Autumn welcomes dried leaves, apples, and cinnamon scents. Winter calls for wool blankets and candlelit coziness. These subtle shifts create a living rhythm in the home, echoing traditions of seasonal awareness rooted in American rural life. A cottagecore home doesn't stop at the visual. The scent of beeswax candles, the sound of a wooden clock ticking, or the gentle crackle of a record player enhance the ambience. Hand-poured candles, lavender sachets, and even soft background folk music weave together a full sensory tapestry. Each element works to comfort and calm. You don't need a countryside estate to achieve this look. Even small city apartments can be infused with cottagecore charm. It's all in the layers, materials, and care put into each piece. Floating wooden shelves, vintage hooks, and handmade decor can turn any space into a sanctuary. This trend proves that comfort and beauty are not tied to size. Modern cottagecore charm with handmade imperfect beauty is more than just a decorating style. It's a way of living. It calls us to slow down, to surround ourselves with pieces that matter, and to cherish the beauty found in flaws. In a world chasing perfection, this aesthetic brings us back to heart, heritage, and home. Through Mid-Journey's evocative visuals and a careful touch of handmade magic, you can create a living space that feels like a warm embrace.